So this of course is the generator that came out of my 1946 John Deere B. I've removed some dirt on the maker's tag here, and there are some numbers. I know you can't read them, but they're 110137, and then there's a space, I think, and it says 14194. I looked those numbers up, and if I got my information correct, that means this is a 6-volt Delco 3-brush generator. Now, I never got a chance to see if it was actually working when it was on the tractor, because it was making kind of a high-pitched squeaking or squealing noise. So I removed the belt and just didn't run it anymore. And plus the wiring was all shot on it anyway, so even if it was working, you know, we weren't going to get an indication at the ammeter that it was. So the first thing I want to do is just do a crude bench test, see if the motor still works, and we'll go from there. So I'm just going to remove the nuts from the terminals here, so I can clean the terminals. You're not going to have much luck testing electrical equipment if your terminals are corroded. I also want to clean up a spot on the generator that we can make a good ground with. I'm also going to remove this old cutout because it's in the way. I don't think it's working anymore, and I want to replace it with the voltage regulator anyway. If you guys don't know the difference between a cutout and a regulator, generally speaking, a cutout is going to have 2 terminals, and a regulator will have 3 or 4 terminals. And the other way to tell is if you take the cap off like this one, cutouts only have 1 coil and regulators have 2 coils. All right, now let's try the bench test. So I know you can't read it, but this is the F terminal here, and this is the A terminal, field and armature. So all I need to do is touch the positive from the battery to the armature post, and if the generator is working, it will spin this pulley like a motor. Nothing. I'm trying some heavier cables now, see if this has any different result. It's like it's wanting to spin. You can hear that squeaking noise, like it's really dry in there or rusted or something. All right, so I guess we're gonna have to crack this thing apart and perhaps clean the inside. Like I said, I don't even know if it's savable, but based on that test, it's not gonna work the way it is. We'll take the dust strap off first. Looks like it had some gasket material underneath the metal band. Now if you listen real close, you can hear that squeaking. And this is in fact a 3-brush generator. I see 1, 2 brushes right there, and the third one right there. Oh my goodness. Look how rusted that armature is. And what do we got in here? Not so much rust in here, just dirt. and grime. The brushes still have a lot of meat on them. I can't tell if any of that wiring is intact or not. It looks like it might be. So I guess what I'll do first is attempt to clean the armature and clean the inside of the housing, and then we'll put it back together and see if it will work at that point. All right, well, that part cleaned up okay. Let's try the rest of it. Now I'm going to clean up the magnets on the inside and get this. I mean, it's just thick with crud. So I'll do that off camera, then I'll bring you right back. I got all the dirt off the magnets. There's still just a hint of surface rust on there, but nothing serious. So let's try to put it back together just to see if we get any life out of it at all. And I'm using my method of using zip ties to keep the brushes pulled out while we put the armature in. And if we look inside, you can see how the brushes are pulled back and out of the way. That way we can just slip the armature in without having to fuss with the brushes. And then once you get the armature in all the way, then we just come back and cut the zip ties, remove the bolts, and then the brushes go back against the armature. This particular generator looks like it has two oil points. There's one right there, and there's also one right there. And for the meantime, I just used a little PB blaster, and we got rid of that squeak at least. It does seem like it's spinning more freely than it was. All right, let's hook up the battery. Well, I grabbed a different set of jumper cables, and this is what we got now. It's not spinning very fast, but it's 6 volts. So that passes that test. Let's try one more thing. So now we've got it clamped in the vise. I've got the A and F terminals jumped together. I've got my multimeter set up here with the ground vice grip to the back bolt here. And I've got my red lead ready to touch on this. So what I'm gonna do is spin this with a drill, touch the red lead to this, and we should get an indication if it's producing electricity or not. Well, it was definitely producing electricity there. It was getting up to 8 volts, spinning it fast. The only thing I don't know is what the actual RPM was when I was spinning the motor. I think the only way to know is to put this back on the tractor, hook up the belt and start the engine and do the same test, just to make sure that the engine is spinning it fast enough to produce more than 6 volts. Well guys, we've got a working generator here. I underestimated the speed in which the generator would spin when it was on the tractor. I thought, you know, having the drill almost full blast would be more than the RPM of the tractor, but I was mistaken on that. It's much faster on the tractor. As you can see, this little 6-volt generator was putting out 12 to 14 volts, and even at a lower RPM there right at the end, it was putting out 11. There's obviously not a voltage regulator on this. We would not hook this up to the battery this way because it would kill the battery. So we need to install one to regulate the voltage that goes back to the battery. All right, great, the thing works. Now what? So I need to order a 6-volt positive ground voltage regulator, and let's clean this thing up a little bit. Remove some of this old paint and maybe give it a fresh coat as long as we're doing it. I'm going to remove the pulley also, just so we can get it cleaned up a little bit better. And of course it's not going to come off easily. I'm going to use this quick strip paint stripper. I've used it once before, seemed to work just fine. So after the paint strippers had a chance to be on there for a while, come back and scrape it off. There's nothing magic about this. It's just a lot of elbow grease. And then you can see it didn't even get off all the coats of the paint. There was more than one layer on there. So I just take a scraper and then I'll do a wire brush and the wire wheel and the drill, go back and forth until it gets down to bare metal. Then use a Scotch-Brite or maybe even some sandpaper on it. I'm gonna do all this off camera. It's probably gonna take me an hour to do this, and then I'll bring you back. Well, after a lot of work, I got most of the paint removed, stripped and sanded, and coated a primer on it. And we're just about ready to paint these things. I'm gonna paint the generator itself and the pulley. We'll let that set overnight, and then we'll be able to reassemble. All right, well, I'm waiting for the regulator to arrive in the mail. We're going to focus on the headlight assemblies a little bit. Maybe we can get a head start on those. For starters, the bulbs. Of course, it's 6-volt. They're single filament. And as far as checking your bulbs, you can do the visual test and just look at the filament. And if it's obviously cracked or not touching in the center anymore, then you know that bulb was bad. But that's a pretty crude test. A better way to do it is to take your multimeter, put it on one of the continuity settings, then you take your bulb, you put one lead on the tip of the bulb right there, then you touch your other lead to the housing of the bulb and move my hand, and you can see we've got perfect continuity between the two. So this bulb tests good. This bulb is a completely different style. It's got a different kind of filament, but you can do the same test. A single filament, put one lead on the tip and one lead on the housing. And this one also tests good. It's got perfect continuity. So theoretically, both of those bulbs should be good. For the buckets themselves, I soaked these in evaporust overnight and they turned out pretty good. This one especially, this is the better one of the two. and it's in actually pretty good condition now. This one still, it was so rusty in here, it's still got a lot of scale, so I'll probably take a wire wheel to that and get the rest of the scale out of there. But the evaporust did its job and got rid of all the rust. Now these buckets had these in this hole right here, so this would go through the hole, and there was these clamps on the inside that would hold them there. It would go through that hole, and you'd run your positive wire to this screw and tighten it down, and then in here that wire would be continued off the internal terminal to the light bulb wire. But one of them was so rusted that both of the screws broke off inside the little thing, and this other one wasn't much better. So I just removed those from the equation. I put grommets in both of them. Instead of having one wire attached here, then another wire coming off the internal terminal, I'm just going to run one continuous wire from outside to in. That'll solve that problem. And now as far as the reflectors go, I still haven't cleaned these up. I think we can improve on this a little bit, get some of the shine back. Down inside the housing, there's these little springs that go in there, and then these wires go down through the middle. You can see there's some tension on that now because of the spring. So when you put the bulb in, there will be tension on it, and the spring will keep the bulb pressed in there. Both of these wires are in bad condition. This one was the better of the two. This wire is just disintegrated, and the little insulator on the end, like on this one, it's just made of Bakelite or something like that, and the one on the other wire broke in half. So what I want to do is make my own wires now, make my own new insulators, and then we're going to have to come up with some way to make kind of a head on the end of the wire, because that's where the bulbs touch. So I found some good cloth wrapped wire, and I'm just going to cut this in half. We'll use one side for one of the buckets and the other side for the other. So I'm just going to strip a little bit of wire on one end of each. So I'm going to set these aside for the moment, and we're going to focus on making some insulators from scratch. So I'm going to cut this wire off so we can get the donut off. Now I can trace this onto something else and hopefully come up with something the same size. This is just a piece of plastic that I found in my junk drawer, and going to see if we can make insulators out of this material. Alright, I've got my circle drawn there, and see if we can get this punched out somehow or cut out. Alright, I've got both patterns on there now. I have a punch set, you know, for punching holes in gaskets and things, but the biggest punch is just a little bit smaller than what we need, so I'm going to have to try to cut these out by hand, and I'm not coming up with a better way than simply just use a good pair of scissors to do this. Not exactly perfectly round, but we're going to work with that. If you guys don't have a good pair of scissors in the shop yet, do yourself a favor and spend 25 bucks and get yourself a good pair of scissors, because man, they make such a world of difference. Like my other scissors probably wouldn't even be able to cut this plastic, but these, no problem. Alright, so now I'm just going to simply take a file, knock down the high spots and the rough edges, and then we'll drill a hole in the middle, and these should be ready to go. Alright, I've got them down to the right size. Drop it in the hole, and if I hold it in there and flip it over, we can see that we have a pretty good fit. So this is a little tricky, right? We have to somehow make a head on the end of our new wire, more or less like that. So I think I've come up with a way that will work. I've got this little brad, stainless steel brad, and I'm going to shove it into the end of our braided wire, you know, hopefully more or less in the middle. Now I'm going to put it in my little soldering vise and see if I can get a decent solder on this. I know this is a little crude yet, but just bear with me. Let's see if we got a good connection here. Oh yeah. Yeah, that little nail isn't going anywhere. So now I'm gonna clean this up a little. That looks a little better. Let's test the connection again before we go any farther. So I've got a nice solid connection on there now, but I still need to make kind of a rounded bead on the end. And let me show you how I think I'm going to do this. I'll just hold it there for a few seconds. So that's what it looks like now. You can see the head of the nail right there. I'm going to melt this one more time and then not push the nail all the way down to the pan. There we go. Let's go clean this up now. Now this is what we have at this point. Nice round bead on the end. Everything's tight. Now I'm just going to put a little bit of shrink wrap over the end, and then we'll slip it on our new donut and get it installed. Just a little bit like that. There, that actually looks pretty nice. And here's the number 2 wire. I did exactly the same way. All right, let's take our new donuts that we made, slip them on. There's one, there's 2. All right, so we'll drop one of the springs in one of the reflectors, put our new wire through everything there, pull it down. Looks great. Let's take one of the bulbs, get that installed. Other spring, other wire. Take the other bulb. Okay, there's only one thing left to do now. So I want to check the continuity from the end of the wires up to the light bulb. And we should have perfect continuity. This window should read 0 across the board. And get this tucked in there. Perfect. And that one's good too. So these are ready to go. So again, what I had in mind for these, remember we put grommets on the back of these the buckets. We're just going to put our new wire through the back and pull it in like that. Like that. And just because I'm OCD, we're going to do one more continuity check. Good. And good. Now I'm just going to take a little bit of SOS pad and a little bit of liquid and just lightly cover the inside of the reflector. See if we can get some of the oxidation and tarnish off. Yeah, that works pretty well. This is just a little bit of invisible glass just for, so we have some liquid on there. Substitute for water, basically. Yeah, it's much shinier. This tractor only came with one lens and one bezel. So I have another one on order. And I don't know if you can read it, but right there it says Guide Tractor Lens. And these are roughly 4 3/4. So we're not going to put this together all the way yet because I want to paint these buckets, but that's pretty much it. Looking good. Meanwhile, the generator is out of the paint booth. Now I just want to clean up this little maker's plate there with the numbers on it, and she'll be ready to go. All right, I've got the pulley on the generator and I painted the end so the nut and everything matches the rest. And we've got these drying as well. The new voltage regulator came in the mail. This is 6-volt positive ground. As far as the wiring goes, we have 4 terminals on the regulator, L, BAT, and F. And then on the back, underneath on this one, is the gen terminal. So F on the regulator goes to F on the generator. Gen on the regulator goes to A on the generator. L goes to the light switch. BAT goes to the ammeter. So let's get this generator installed on the tractor and then we'll go through the rest of the wiring. First, I'm going to tuck the belt up around the fan blades. I don't know what the size of the belts were from the factory, but this belt is a 1/2 inch by 29 and it seems to fit well. All right, the generator is installed. There's the adjuster bolt right there, a mounting bolt on the bottom. There's a second mounting bolt on the rear. Everything is mostly secure, except look what happened. See that crack? I don't know why that happened. I just put it back together the way it was before. So that's frustrating. That's cast iron, of course. The generator is secure because the front 2 fasteners are secure. So I'm going to move forward with this video and this generator lighting project. But what I'm going to have to do when it's done is take it back off and see if I can attempt to weld this cast iron ear back on, or find another one of these brackets on eBay or something. Anyway, that was too bad. I don't know why that happened, but we'll keep going forward. All right, it's the next day now, and I think I have everything hooked up correctly, but I don't know yet. We're gonna give it a try. I've got a master battery switch right here, on and off. This is the light switch, on and off. That's our starter button, that was already there. These gauges, remember in a previous video, we put those in new. This came with the tractor, and this is the first time it's been hooked up, so I don't even know if it works. So now we're going to polarize the system before we start it up and see if everything works. And polarizing the system is super easy. You just touch the BAT terminal on the regulator to the gen terminal on the regulator, or in this case, because gen is connected to the A post, we can just use that. So essentially we're jumping A to BAT. And we're just going to touch this momentarily, and it's going to make a little spark. And that's it. Now the system should be polarized and set up for positive ground. All right, the system's hooked up and ready to start, and see if the generator is actually going to work, see if the ammeter is going to work, see if the regulator is going to work. Fingers crossed. I've really been fighting with this thing for the last couple of days, but I think maybe we've got it. For starters, we have a good indication on the ammeter here. When I turn the lights on, you can see it reads discharge, which it should with the tractor off. Lights off, goes back to 0. So let's get this thing started and we'll test the system. Well guys, I think I've got it. I'll put a wiring diagram of how I hooked this tractor up at the very end of the video if you guys are interested in taking a look at that, because I don't want to sit here and explain where every single wire went. I know some of you might be curious about that, so look for that at the very end of the video. So we definitely got a little bit lucky with this ammeter. I don't know how old that thing is, but it still works, and it seems to work just fine. It was showing a positive charge up to about 10. That equated to roughly 7+ volts on the voltmeter. Then at a slightly lower RPM, it was still reading 6.8, 6.9. So the generator is working, and the regulator is working as it should. The only thing that really went wrong on this project was this cracked generator mounting bracket right there. I don't know why that cracked. Like I said, I put it on just like it was before, but that should be a relatively easy fix. I think I'm going to put a heat shield right in here, because this is the exhaust and it runs right by the generator, right by the regulator. And this exhaust is going to get somewhere between probably 500 and 800 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's just going to cook our regulator there. So I think a heat shield would be a good thing to add right there. And the light repair and wiring job was a success. Both lights work, and they actually seem fairly bright even in the daytime. But what I really want to do is check this at night. Well, really not bad for 6 volts. I could see out in front of the tractor just fine. Well, I think we're really saving another tractor here, guys. I think this was just so bad off and neglected for who knows how many years before we got it at that auction. And since then, we've really come a long way with it. It's actually a pretty decent little tractor right now. But there's still more to do. We need to check out the rear lift to see if that works. I still have to restore that other back wheel, and who knows what else we'll find on it. But for now, I think it's turning into a pretty good tractor. So thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate the support. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. I would appreciate it. And I hope to see everybody on the next video. Take care.